Hey, welcome to Mama Mandala. I'm Hagar. So glad you're here. It's a new moon today, a new moon in Capricorn. Maybe you're catching this a couple of days after the new moon, which they say that the energy of the new moon is still here for us to play with, to work with. It's a new moon in Capricorn. And by the way, just FYI, I'm not an astrologer. I don't have a faith-based relationship with astrology, even though I love playing with it. I'm more of a mythologist. I love symbol. I love the way that mythology and archetypes inform us about ourselves, about where we are, about where society is. Stories really have the capacity to teach us about ourselves and about each other. And so I invite you to look at this in all the ways that this touches you. And in a way, you know, it's a new year. It's the first new moon of the year. So happy new year. And maybe you don't exactly feel happy. Maybe the events in the world are weighing heavily on you. I know that the war that's going on in the Middle East is very heavy on my heart. And many of us experience that. And in a way, while we move into a new year with a heaviness of heart, with maybe being worried about certain things and not exactly having the kind of happiness and positive attitude that you know the world kind of tells us we should have in the beginning of the year. And maybe you do, and if you do, mwah, enjoy it. But if we don't, I love this space of conversation, this space of exploration of archetypes and myth as a space where we can look at things from different angles, where we are not locking ourselves to one way of seeing or thinking or being with our lives, ourselves, each other, but rather shifting around our point of view and cultivating the capacity to explore the world and ourselves in different ways and not being locked in only one way in only one way. And in some ways, even though the character, the archetype of Capricorn is very grounded, very much associated with structure, with a sense of sometimes even strictness, because Capricorn is the capacity to actually make something happen. You know, in some ways, some people associate the energy of Capricorn with the energy of a midwife, someone who is able to support a process of birthing something, bringing something from the womb and into the air, from the place of vision and imagination, which is very much where we are in the season, still in the darkness of the year, still in that place where we're in the cave with the bear in the womb of creation. And, you know, the sun enters Capricorn on the winter solstice, so it arrives in the darkest day of the year when the sun is at its most. If we're in the northern hemisphere, it's the most southern moment for the sun, and it pauses there. It seems to pause there for us from our earthly perspective, and then it begins to travel with Capricorn. It's almost like Capricorn excavates the power of the sun from the depth of darkness and starts to carry it northward, starts to bring it into the light. So it's the energy of bringing something from the darkness of death into a process of rebirth, from the darkness of the womb and into the world, into form, into shape. So it's an energy that shapes things up, that creates structures. It's an earth sign. And in a way, even though it is associated with more of a disciplined kind of a way, with more of a, you know, and when we think of discipline, we do think of boundaries that in some ways restrict our maybe ability to see things, maybe our ability to experience things. It sort of creates this, I feel this tightness, but it's a gathering that then allows us, like the goat that is the symbol of this sign, of this archetype, to move around the landscape, right? And it's like the mountain goat that is able to move toward the peak, where we can see a very where we can have a very broad view. And from each place that the goat travels toward the summit, and it may move sometimes up, sometimes on the same level, sometimes up, and it's sometimes a little down so that it can go further up. And it's a very slow process. The goat can stand there for a very long time, balancing, right, on the rock before it takes the next step. And so it invites us in a way, even though it has that disciplined power, to move around the mountains, to move around the landscape and see things in different ways, see different points of view, and in even deeper ways. So the symbol of Capricorn is the goat, but it used to be, and people are kind of bringing it back, it used to be a sea goat. So it's a goat with a tail of a fish. So it's got the capacity to climb up the mountain and to do it slowly and to do it. Capricorn is very much of a calculated energy, and the capacity to think things through and to not rush into decisions and to not rush to the next step because you have to kind of figure out the right way of moving, but it is moving. It's earth, so it's grounded and it's slow, but it's going to get to the top, right? And it's a sea creature, so it takes us into the depth of our ocean of feelings and thoughts, into the depth of our unconscious, into the depth of imagination. So it carries us, and it carries the energy of being in the depth of still envisioning this year, right? Still being in that space where we're resting in the darkness and thinking and feeling into how we want to shape the year, along with the capacity to shape it and the ability to bring dream into earthy reality, to anchor our imagination in the soil of real life, right? To bring ourselves from the cave of dreams into the landscape that we want to keep shaping and forming and co-participating in making, right? So Capricorn in its sea depth carries us forth and brings us into our capacity to make something real. I'm trying to be careful of the word manifest just because it's so overused, right? So, but it does carry with it a manifesting energy. And then this is so cool because, Capricorn is very much associated with an energy that's more reserved, and there's perseverance, and there's something, in the shadowy realms of it. It can be a little harsh, and it's sensual, it's earthy, but it's not usually thought of so much as sexual, and yet the horns of the goat are taking us all the way to where we're playing with a horned god, right? With the energy of nature itself, with the way that Christianity took this primal desire, primordial forces of lust and aliveness, and turned it into something that's evil, right? Turned the horned god and the power of nature into the devil. So Capricorn has a little bit of a devilish kind of energy, and it's capricious, right? It's very it's very thoughtful and very calculated, and yet it can kind of make a move that's maybe surprising, maybe not expected. So it has this sexy kind of an energy to it. The Greeks thought of Capricorn as Pan, right, which is a nature, wild god, satyr kind of a character who is very lustful, and kind of the sexuality of Pan is out of control, because mythically, if we think about it, the energy of nature is rooted in desire and sex. This is where all life comes from. So we have here the invitation, the possibility of marrying the untamed with the calculated, the undomesticated with the disciplined, right? We have this, I think of the god Shiva from the Hindu mythology, that is, it is very much of a wild character, right? He lives in the forest and on the mountains, and he can meditate for 3,000 years, and he's got this capacity to focus like no one can, and yet he's wild and ferocious, and his hair is flailing, and he's got snakes as ornaments, and Kali is his wife, right? So we have in us this capacity to weave together our own powerful ability to bring to life through discipline, through hard work. This is how Capricorn lives in us, as like these steps of hard work, along with the out of controlness. And we want both. I don't want to lose my untamed powers, right? But I also want to have self-mastery-ish. I don't want to have full self-mastery, because I know that doesn't exist. And also when we start to get into these energies of control, we start to lose the artistic, right? The creative. So in order to stay creative, we have to leave a little, and let's face it, we can't help it, because if we repress it, it's going to control us. But we have to leave room for the untamed, right? We have to leave room for the wildness. But if we completely let the wildness rule, that's not going to be so helpful for our lives and for society either. So we want to keep, I don't think about it as balancing, because I don't necessarily think that balance exists, but I think of it as a continuous conversation, as an integration of different aspects of self, of a process of weaving together a wild, ferocious, calculated, disciplined kind of a character, so that we can bring from the wildness of our dreams, from the creative forces, from the sparks of inspiration, something that can be beneficial for ourselves and for the world around us. And we need the discipline in order to keep making it. We need the structures that Capricorn is so famous for, right? The capacity to keep building and doing it slow, right? It's still in the darkness of winter. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is the energy of time, the limitation of time, the energy that astrologers talk about as very much of a restriction. But even that, we have this holiday that happened in ancient Roman times, that was dedicated to Saturn, Saturnalia, and that was a holiday that all the social norms could be broken, and sexuality was celebrated on those days, and the slaves were served and taken in as kings, and everything was kind of upside down during that time. So it's associated with Saturn, which is all about structure. Saturn is also the sower of seeds, and this time of year is when agriculturally, maybe we begin to sow the seeds, or this is when the seeds are in the ground and they're incubating. So we give time and space for the darkness to hold the seeds, to nourish the seeds, so that they can become the very next wave of nourishment and abundance. And so we have this play here between the wild and the tamed, the domesticated and the natural forces of our primal desires. So on this new moon and during this lunar cycle, we can still give ourselves time to dream and to weave together the net of our plans for this year. And we do it slow. We're not in a rush. We give ourselves time if we can, with what we can, right? Because not all of us are privileged enough to be able to just kind of choose our own rhythm. But as much as we can, take our time, build it slow, give structure to the wild so that it can flow in a way that is nourishing, that is supportive, that is helpful, that feeds your fire. And then in more ancient times, this sign was actually ruled by Vesta, who was the goddess of the hearth and of the home. So it's the fire within, and the invitation to feed the fire of our passions and of our desires, and to give it a container, to give it the hearth, to give it something to live within, to burn within, to give it a place to burn, a structure and a container, so that we don't burn out, so that the fire feeds us, and on the fire we can cook that which feeds us and others, but we don't burn out. We don't do too much too fast and then crash, if we can, right? If we can help it. And this is cool because fire is so wild, but Vesta is a goddess of homemaking. Again, it's the fire within. So let yourself play with the wildness and the hominess, right? With a space between structure and untamed business, and enjoy this lunar cycle if you can. And you can make those possibly goals and dreams about things you really care about. Capricorn has very much of a community-oriented kind of nature. The climbing to the summit is not only about the individual reaching for what they want, but it's very much of a collective journey, right? And it's the invitation to enjoy the journey, to stand on that rock and take our time to look at the view before we go to the next thing. Knowing that once we reach a summit, there are going to be other summits, and we're going to have to make a descent back down so that we could climb the next thing. So the more people, plants, animals, forces of nature we bring with us on our journeys, the more supportive and supported we're going to be. So who are you bringing with you on this journey through the mountains as a mountain god, as a mountain goat? And who are you bringing with you into the depth of the ocean as you flick your fishtail and swim into the depth of what you care about most fully and in the most cherished, and maybe even Capricorn style, a little bit of a hidden, secreted kind of a way. So I hope this was somewhat interesting and evocative for you. You can play with it in all the ways that you want. I will leave a link to the post if you want to read about it a little bit, to a post on mamamandala.com about this new moon, with a couple of questions that you can use as journal prompts, and sign up for our mailing list on mamamandala.com. I will also leave a link in the description of the video, and subscribe to this channel so that we can hang out more and explore archetypes and myths and bring them also into the body in other sessions. So thank you for joining me, and have a beautiful, meaningful new moon and a gorgeous lunar cycle, and I'll see you soon. Mwah. Thank you.